My name is Tessa. I'm 16. And the night my life broke into pieces started like any other family dinner. I was still in my school clothes, fingers stained with paint from the art project I'd stayed late to finish. I should have been thinking about the spring dance and the gallery that had just agreed to display my work. Instead, I was staring across the table at my brother's face, twisted with a kind of rage I had never seen before. It started with one sentence. I mentioned, a little too proudly, that the gallery wanted to feature my paintings, that my art teacher thought I had a real shot at a scholarship. The room went quiet. My parents gave me a distracted, "That's nice, honey," and then turned straight back to asking my brother about his grades, his future, his plans. I laughed it off and joked, "Guess almost dying of stress for my art doesn't count as achievement in this house, right?" That's when his chair scraped back hard. He stood up so fast his glass tipped over, water spilling across the table. His eyes locked on mine, burning. "You think you're the only one who works hard?" he snapped. I said something back, something about him always being the favorite, how I was tired of being treated like a background extra in my own home. It was like lighting a match over gasoline. He came around the table, voice rising, words cutting, accusing me of trying to make him look bad. I stood my ground, until he grabbed my arm. The argument exploded. I remember yelling, his fingers digging into my skin, my back hitting the cool frame of the decorative glass door that separated the kitchen from the hallway. He stepped closer, jaw clenched, and in one sudden surge of anger, he shoved me. Hard. My body flew backward through the glass. There was the sickening sound of it shattering, the sting of impact, the cold bite of the floor. Then screaming. Footsteps. His panicked voice shouting, "It was an accident! I didn't mean to." And somewhere behind that, my parents already echoing the same words. After that, everything went dark. Before I tell you what he said when people started asking questions, and what I did the day I finally walked out of that house, tell me what time it is where you are, and where you're listening from. I want to see just how far this story of family, betrayal, and waking up to a different life can travel. Darkness isn't quiet. Nobody tells you that. People think a coma is like sleep, like nothingness. For me, it was like being trapped behind thick glass, hearing the world on the other side but unable to move, speak, or open my eyes. I don't know how long I floated there at first. Time didn't feel real. There were only sounds. The steady beeping of machines, the soft shuffle of shoes, the rustle of fabric when someone sat down beside me. And voices. Always the voices. My parents' voices came first. My mom's was shaky, cracked from crying. "It was an accident," she kept saying. "He didn't mean it. He lost control for a second." My dad's voice was lower, tense. "We'll tell them she slipped. The floor was wet. He tried to grab her, that's it. We don't need the police digging into this. The family doesn't need that." Accident. Slipped. Tried to grab me. I wanted to scream that it wasn't like that. He hadn't tried to catch me. He'd thrown me. But my mouth wouldn't move. My fingers wouldn't twitch. My thoughts were razor sharp and completely useless inside a body that refused to respond. Days blurred together. Sometimes I heard doctors giving updates. "Head trauma, multiple cuts, glass lacerations. It's a miracle she's alive," one of them said. Someone else asked, "What exactly happened?" My mother's voice came out too quickly. They were arguing. She stepped back, lost her balance, fell through the glass door. My son tried to stop her. She said it so smoothly it sounded rehearsed. Each time the story was told, it became cleaner, safer, more convenient. Every version pushed me further away from what really happened. I learned things I wasn't supposed to know. I heard my brother sobbing once, hiccuping breaths, saying, "I told you it got out of hand. You said you'd fix it. You promised." My dad answered sharply, "We are fixing it." You will stick to the story. Do you understand? If you love this family, you will not mention the word shove again. My heart pounded even though my body lay perfectly still. So that was it. They knew the truth. They just chose the version that protected him. Another time, an aunt I barely saw sat by my bed and whispered, "Oh, Tess, what did they do to you?" Her voice dropped even lower. "You didn't just slip, did you?" No one answered her, but the silence that followed said enough. In that silent, paralyzed world, a new kind of clarity formed. I realized that while I was stuck here, my story was being edited without me. I'd always been the quiet one, the easy kid. Now I was the girl in the hospital bed who couldn't contradict a single lie. Somewhere in that dark space, fury started to burn. I didn't just want to wake up. I wanted my voice back. I wanted the truth back. And I wanted every single person who had chosen the easy lie over me to look me in the eyes and face what they had done. The day I truly woke up, it wasn't dramatic. No sudden gasp, no movie-style sit-up. I surfaced in stages like rising through deep water. First, I could sense light behind my eyelids. Then I realized I could move my fingers, just a little. Then, one morning, I heard a nurse say, "Tessa, if you can hear me, can you try to squeeze my hand?" It felt like trying to lift a car, but my fingers closed weakly around hers. The room exploded into movement. She responded, "Get her parents." When I finally blinked my eyes open, the brightness stabbed, and everything was blurry. My head throbbed. My throat felt like sandpaper. My mom was suddenly there, tears spilling. "Oh my God, baby, you're back. You're okay. You're okay." For a second, instinct kicked in. I wanted to sink into her arms and let her words smooth over everything, but the memory of their whispering, their rehearsed lies, snapped into focus. I stared at her, my voice rough. "How long?" She swallowed. "You've been in a coma for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of them controlling the narrative. 3 weeks of my brother hiding behind the word accident. 3 weeks of everyone deciding who I was and what had really happened." As my mind cleared, I started noticing what else had changed. There were flowers everywhere, balloons, cards from people at school calling me brave and strong and a fighter. One card made my stomach twist. "He told us how you slipped," someone had written. "We're so glad he tried to help you." Tried to help me. He was being praised as the brother who almost saved me from my own clumsiness. My art teacher had sent a long letter saying the gallery was willing to hold my spot once I was recovered enough. But there was a line about my parents having serious concerns about the stress and whether I should take a step back from art for my health. Take a step back from the one thing that felt like mine. Even my future was being negotiated without me. Physical therapy started soon after. Every movement hurt, but pain was the one thing that felt honest. My body didn't lie. It remembered the impact, the glass, the fall. While I learned to walk steadily again, I also learned more about the version of events that had been sold to everyone. Nurses would say things like, "It was such a freak accident. You kids and your arguments, huh?" A neighbor who visited shook her head and said, "You're lucky your brother was there. He told us he reached for you, but it was too late." Each comment was another reminder. In the story the world believed, I was the fragile girl who slipped, and he was the almost hero. The only person who looked at me like she didn't quite buy that version was my aunt. She leaned in one evening when it was just us. "I heard them in the hallway when they thought you were out for good," she murmured. "I heard the word shove. Then I heard them decide never to use it again." "You're not crazy, Tessa. You're not imagining this." My chest tightened. I wasn't alone. Someone else had heard what I'd heard in the dark. "Why would they do that?" I rasped. She sighed. "Because it's easier to protect the child they've already invested all their hopes in than to admit he hurt you. They're scared." but that doesn't mean you have to accept it. That night, staring at the hospital ceiling, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would play along just long enough to get my strength back. I would learn exactly how far their lies had gone, and when I could finally stand on my own 2 feet, I would make sure the truth they buried didn't stay buried. Once my eyes were open, everyone seemed to forget that my ears had been open long before. They spoke more carefully around me now, but habits slip. I listened to every word like it was evidence. On the outside, I let them see what they wanted. The fragile girl, grateful to be alive, overwhelmed, too tired to argue. Inside, I was cataloging every detail. My brother avoided my gaze at first. When he finally forced himself to come alone, he stood at the foot of my bed, hands jammed into his pockets. "Hey," he said, like we'd just bumped into each other at school. I'm glad you're okay." I watched him for a long time. "They said I slipped," I said slowly. "Is that what you told them?" His jaw tightened. "You hit the door," he mumbled. "It broke. It all happened so fast." That wasn't an answer. "Did I slip?" I pressed. He looked at the wall. "You stepped back. My hand was on you. It was an accident." There it was again. The word that had become their shield. I didn't push further that day. Not yet. I needed him to feel safe enough to talk. I needed him to forget I would use every word later. In therapy sessions, I challenged myself to do one more step, one more stretch. The sooner I got out of that hospital, the sooner I could see what had happened to my room, my art, my life. Meanwhile, I noticed little cracks in my parents' perfect script. A social worker came by once asking neutral questions about conflict at home. My mom's smile was too bright as she answered. "Of course they fought sometimes. Siblings do. But nothing serious. We're a close family." The social worker glanced at me and asked softly, "Do you feel safe at home, Tessa?" 3 sets of eyes burned into me. I could feel my parents begging me silently to say yes. I could feel my aunt silently begging me to tell the truth. I took a slow breath. "I will," I said, when we stopped pretending that night didn't happen. The room went stiff. The social worker wrote something down. My mom quickly cut in. "She's still confused. She's been through so much," I interrupted, my voice hoarse but steady. I remember being pushed. It was the first time I'd said it out loud to anyone with authority. No one responded directly, but after that, a new tension hung in the air. At home, from what my aunt told me, things were shifting too. Some relatives had heard different versions of the story and started asking questions. My parents were scrambling to keep control, calling it gossip and misunderstanding. The more they tried to control the narrative, the more obvious it became that there was a narrative to control. The final straw came when I overheard my parents outside my room one night. My mom whispered, "What if she tells someone everything?" My dad sighed. "Then we deal with it. She won't want to destroy this family." That was the moment something inside me solidified. They were counting on my love for them to keep me quiet. They were counting on my fear of breaking the family to protect the person who had already broken me. They didn't realize that the girl they'd known before the glass shattered was gone. The new version of me had spent weeks in the dark, listening to them choose him over me. Love was still there, but it was no longer blind. I started planning. If they had rewritten my story while I couldn't speak, I would rewrite the ending now that I could. And I wasn't going to do it with screaming or broken plates. I was going to do it with the one thing they had taken from me, the truth, in my own words, on my own terms. I waited until I was back home to confront my brother properly. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. The glass door had been replaced. New panels, no cracks, as if nothing had ever happened there. My room was tidier than I'd left it. Some of my paintings stacked neatly in the corner. A couple were missing. My mom said they'd been damaged in the accident. I wondered if they'd really been ruined or if it was just another way to erase pieces of who I'd been before that night. A week after I came home, I asked my brother to talk. "Just us," I said. "In my room." He hesitated, then nodded. Once the door was closed, he leaned against my dresser, arms crossed, like he was the one who needed to protect himself. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed calm. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened," I said. "No script. No, it was an accident. Just the truth." He rubbed a hand over his face. "We've already gone over this, Tess." "We haven't," I said quietly. "You've told everyone the version that makes you look better. Now I want the version where I almost died." He flinched and looked away. Silence thickened between us. I let it stretch. Finally, he spoke, voice low. "We were arguing. I was tired. Mom and Dad had just gone on about my grades again. Then you started in about the gallery and scholarships, and how they only cared about me. You know how that sounds?" I stared at him. "Like the truth." He ignored that. I snapped. "I got in your face. You didn't back down. You never back down anymore." I grabbed your arm. "You said I was proving your point." I lost it. "I shoved you." The words came out harsh, like they hurt to say. Good, I thought. They should hurt. "Did you see the glass?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I did. But I wasn't thinking. It was just, 1 second you were in front of me, and the next you were gone and everything was breaking and there was blood and I—" His voice cracked. I panicked. I told them it was an accident. They grabbed onto that like a life raft. I let his confession sit there. I'd known it already in my body, in the ache in my bones, in the way my head still throbbed when I moved too quickly. But hearing him say it out loud, without the word slip, changed everything. "Do you know what it was like listening to you all when you thought I was gone?" I asked. "Hearing you promise to stick to the story? Hearing them decide which parts of my pain were convenient enough to keep?" He swallowed hard. I was scared. "So was I." I shot back. "I was scared and paralyzed, and nobody cared what I remembered as long as your future stayed clean." He sank onto the chair by my desk. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't a monster. He was a scared, angry boy who had made a terrible choice, and then another one every single day he repeated that lie. Both things could be true at once. "I want you to stop hiding behind them," I said. "I want you to tell the truth to someone who isn't me. I want you to stop letting them use my silence as your shield." His shoulders sagged. "They'll hate me." "They already know," I replied. "They just like pretending they don't. This isn't about who they love more. It's about whether you're willing to let me carry the weight of what you did for the rest of my life." He sat there, torn between fear and guilt. I could see it. I could also see that pushing him too hard right then would just make him retreat into the same excuses. So I did the one thing none of them expected. "I recorded this," I said quietly, tapping my phone on the bed. His head snapped up. "What?" "I told you I needed the truth," I said. "Now I have it. From your own mouth. I'm not going to post it or send it to everyone you know, unless you force me to. But I'm done being the only one paying for your anger." His face went pale. "You're blackmailing me?" "I'm giving you a choice," I corrected. "Either you stand beside me when I tell them the real story, or this recording becomes the way they find out. One way or another, I'm not staying silent anymore." For the first time since the glass shattered, I watched him realize that I wasn't just the little sister he could push around. I was the only person who could decide whether his lie stayed safe, and I wasn't interested in keeping it safe anymore. In the days that followed, The house felt like a bomb waiting to go off. My brother was quieter, jumpier. My parents tried to slip back into normal, but normal felt like a costume that didn't fit anymore. I spent those days painting again for the first time since the accident. My hands trembled at first, but muscle memory took over. One canvas turned into two, then three. Every piece came out raw, jagged lines and fractured shapes, splashes of color that collided instead of blending. When my aunt stopped by and saw them, she covered her mouth. This is what it felt like, isn't it? She said softly. Being broken and put back together wrong. I nodded. I'm not just going to tell the story, I said. I'm going to show it. She understood before anyone else did that my art was no longer just about beauty. It was evidence. It was therapy. It was testimony. A week later, I told my parents I wanted a family night. We sat in the living room, the TV off, the tension so thick it almost hummed. My brother avoided my eyes, but he didn't leave. That was something. I took a deep breath. I've been remembering more, I began. My mom immediately stiffened. Honey, the doctor said your memory might be fuzzy. You don't have to force it. It's not fuzzy, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I remember him grabbing me. I remember him seeing the glass and pushing me anyway. My dad sighed like he was exhausted. Tessa, we've been through this. It was an accident. You kids got carried away. No, I said. He got carried away. I got carried through a door. My brother flinched. I turned to him. You want to say it or should I play it? My parents exchanged a confused look. Play what? My mom asked slowly. I held up my phone. The part where he describes what really happened. The part where he says the word shove. My mom's face drained of color. My dad sat up straighter. You recorded your own brother? He demanded. You lied for your own son, I shot back. Let's not pretend this is about principles. Silence fell like a blanket. My brother stared at the carpet. Then, in a voice so small I almost didn't recognize it, he said, She's telling the truth. My mom snapped her head toward him. What are you saying? His hands shook. I pushed her, he whispered. I knew the glass was there. I didn't think. I just wanted to shut her up. I didn't mean to hurt her that bad. But I did. And I let you call it an accident because I was scared. The air left the room in a rush. My dad closed his eyes. My mom shook her head, denial crumbling. We were trying to protect you, she said weakly. You thought my life was a fair price for his future, I cut in. You thought my silence was a problem you could manage. You thought I'd wake up and be so grateful to be alive that I'd play along. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. I almost died. I lost weeks of my life. I lost my spot at the gallery. I will live with this head injury for the rest of my life. And you wanted to call it a freak accident so you could sleep at night. Tears spilled down my mom's cheeks. We were scared, she whispered. We didn't want the police involved. We didn't want our family torn apart. You tore it apart the second you chose a story over me, I said. I don't know what happens next, but I know one thing. I'm not carrying this alone anymore. I told them, calmly and clearly, that I had options. I could give the recording to the social worker. I could ask the hospital to update their report. I could go to the police myself when I was ready. Their faces showed me they understood that I meant it. I wasn't threatening out of spite. I was outlining reality. What do you want us to do? My dad finally asked, sounding older than I'd ever heard him. I took a breath. I want honesty. With me, with the doctors, with the school. I want you to stop acting like I'm fragile and start treating me like the person you hurt. I want therapy. Real therapy. For all of us. and I want you to support me going back to my art instead of using my health as an excuse to keep me quiet and at home." They looked at each other, then at my brother, who was still staring at his hands like they were foreign objects. Slowly, they nodded. It wouldn't fix everything. It wouldn't erase the glass, the coma, the lies. But it was the first time I felt the balance shifting back toward me. For once, they were the ones scrambling to adjust to a new reality I had created. Therapy didn't magically solve our problems, but it stripped away a lot of the comfortable lies we'd lived in for years. Sitting in front of a stranger with a notebook, we were forced to say things we'd never dared say out loud at home. My parents had to hear themselves explain why they'd decided one child's clean record mattered more than the other child's broken body. My brother had to look me in the eye and say the word shove over and over until it stopped sounding like an accident and started sounding like what it was: a choice. I had to confront my own patterns too. The years I'd spent staying quiet to keep the peace. The way I'd convinced myself that being easy and low maintenance meant I was loved. It turned out I wasn't just angry about the night of the glass door. I was angry about every time I'd swallowed hurt, so someone else wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. As the months passed, things actually did change. The hospital updated their notes after a follow-up where I explained that my injuries were from being pushed during a fight, not from slipping. The social worker checked in more often. There was talk of consequences, of an incident on his record, of programs and anger management and restitution. For the first time, the word consequence entered our family vocabulary in a real way. My brother started going to therapy on his own. Sometimes he came home drained and quiet. Other times he'd knock on my door and awkwardly share something he'd realized about himself, about pressure, about how our parents had built him up as the golden child without teaching him what to do with his own frustration. I listened, but I didn't let his growth erase my pain. Both could exist. Justice, for me, didn't look like him in handcuffs. It looked like him no longer being able to hide from what he'd done. It looked like my parents finally seeing me as more than a prop in their story of the perfect family. It looked like me having choices. When the gallery reached out again, tentatively asking if I was still painting, I sent them photos of my new work. The fractured pieces, the harsh colors, the jagged lines. "This is what the last year has felt like," I wrote. "If you still want to show my art, I want to show the truth." They did. The night of the exhibition, I stood in a room full of people staring at canvases that had been born from my pain. My parents were there, awkward and proud and guilty all at once. My brother hovered at the back, hands in his pockets. Beside one of the largest pieces, a chaotic explosion of color bursting through a dark, cracked shape that looked suspiciously like a door, there was a small card with my artist's statement. It didn't name names. It didn't tell the whole story. But it said enough. It said that sometimes the people who hurt you are the ones who were supposed to protect you. It said that waking up from a coma can mean more than just opening your eyes. It can mean realizing your life was built on a story that never belonged to you. It said that telling the truth, even quietly, can be an act of revenge and an act of healing at the same time. After the show, my aunt hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You did it," she whispered. "You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that's yours." Walking out of the gallery that night, the air felt different, lighter. My brother caught up to me on the sidewalk. "I saw your statement," he said. "I know it was about me." I looked at him. "It was about all of us," I replied. "About what happens when we choose silence over truth." He nodded, eyes wet. "I'm trying," he said. "I know," I answered, "and I'm not waiting for you to finish trying to live my life." That's what changed most after the coma. Not just our family dynamic, not just the way they looked at me. I changed. I stopped measuring my worth by how much trouble I didn't cause. I stopped letting fear of ruining the family keep me from protecting myself. My revenge wasn't a dramatic courtroom scene or a public takedown. It was walking into my future with my head high, my story in my own hands, and the knowledge that every time someone hears it, including you, right now, the lie that almost swallowed me gets a little weaker. And if you've ever been the quiet one in your family, the easy one, the one who was expected to forgive and forget, maybe my story will do for you what painting did for me. Remind you that your voice is not a problem to manage. It's the one thing they can't take from you unless you let them.